how do we actually price risk? It's literally the fundamental multi-trillion-dollar question of modern finance. Think about it. When you're evaluating an investment, how do you mathematically prove that the expected return actually justifies the inherent danger of putting your money on the line? Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to bridge a massive gap. We're taking those theoretical finance concepts you've been reading about in your textbooks and turning them into practical, hard-hitting spreadsheet models. These are the exact same models that real analysts use on the job every single day. Here is our agenda for today. We'll hit 1. The basics of CAPM. 2. Adding size and value. 3. Setting up your Excel. 4. Running the regression. 5. Interpreting alpha and errors. And finally, 6. Real-world investment decisions. All right, let's dive into Section 1, the basics of CAPM. I like to call this the ocean's tide. So think of the overall stock market kind of like the ocean's tide. When the tide comes in, it lifts all the boats, right? And when it goes out, well, all the boats drop. Now, CAPM, the capital asset pricing model, assumes this broad market force is the absolute main driver of returns, and it's measured by something we call beta. If an asset has a beta of exactly 1.0, it means it moves perfectly in sync with the market's tide. Anything greater than 1.0, you're in for a wild ride. Less than 1.0 is a bit smother. Basically, higher beta means higher systematic risk, which means investors are absolutely going to demand a higher expected return just to compensate them for taking on that extra danger. Moving right along to Section 2, adding size and value. This is the Fama French evolution. Okay, so back in the early 90s, these two economists, Eugene Fama and Kenneth French, had a huge realization. They saw that CAPM, which is that single blue block of market risk you're seeing, just wasn't telling the whole story. So they proposed a multi-factor approach. They added 2 completely new blocks to our risk foundation, size and value. And they actually proved mathematically that smaller companies and value-oriented companies systematically outperform the broader market over long periods of time. To keep this super simple, let's use a couple of analogies. The size factor, which is mathematically known as SMB or small minus big, compares small cap stocks to large cap stocks. Think of small caps like fast little speedboats. They can move incredibly quickly, sure, but they're way riskier in choppy waters compared to a massive stable cruise ship. Because of that, investors need higher returns to jump in the speedboat. Now, the value factor, or HML for high minus low, compares high book-to-market value stocks to flashy growth stocks. Think of value stocks, kind of like a thrift store flip. They're inexpensive, maybe a little distressed, but historically, they offer a higher premium to folks willing to put in the work, especially when you compare it to paying a huge premium up front for luxury growth brands. And here is the absolute kicker. When you rely solely on standard CAPM, you can explain maybe 70% of a diversified portfolio's returns, but by adding these size and value factors, the Fama French 3-factor model can explain up to a staggering 90% of those returns. That's huge. It just completely crushes CAPM when it comes to explanatory power. Let's move into Section 3, setting up your Excel. It's time to take this from the classroom straight to the cubicle. I want you to imagine you're a junior analyst. Your boss tasks you with evaluating a stock. Well, before you even think about crunching the numbers, you need really clean data based on standard academic methodology. Take a look at this flow. You pull your historical daily closing prices, convert them to a monthly frequency, grab the 3-month T-bills to use as our risk-free rate, and, this is absolutely crucial, filter out any thinly traded companies so your entire analysis doesn't end up skewed. Here is your exact shopping data shopping list for Excel. First up, your risk-free rate. Second, the expected market return, which historically tracks around 8 to 10% for U.S. equities. Third, you'll need your specific assets' historical returns. And finally, those size and value premiums we just talked about, the SMB and HML factors. Now, the best part? You don't have to calculate those from scratch. You can literally download them directly, completely for free, right from the Kenneth French data library online. That brings us to Section 4, running the regression. Let's get right into the step-by-step mechanics. Okay, now that your data is perfectly organized in your spreadsheet, it's time to run the regression. Step 1, we need to find our beta. In Excel, you'll just use the equals slope function. You highlight your assets' historical returns as the Y values and the market index returns as the X values. Super easy. Step 2, we adjust that beta. And step 3, we use Excel data tables to really test the sensitivity of our model. Let's look a little closer at step 2 because honestly, it is a total game changer. See, if you just use the raw historical beta, you're going to make a pretty big mistake. Why? Because historical betas are incredibly volatile. Research actually shows that over time, a company's beta naturally tends to drift back toward 1.0. So to make our forward-looking model way more stable, we use an adjusted beta formula. This is actually the same logic famously used by Bloomberg. You just multiply your raw beta by 2/3 and then add 1/3 of 1.0. This simple tweak accounts for mean reversion and gives you a much more reliable metric to work with. Let's hit section 5, interpreting alpha and errors, or basically making sense of all this output. Look, calculating the numbers in Excel is really only half the battle. When you actually run a regression, one of your main outputs is the intercept. In the finance world, we call this alpha. And alpha, it's basically the holy grail. It represents the abnormal return that is not explained by our known risk factors. So if your Excel regression kicks out a statistically significant positive alpha that tells you that a stock, or maybe a fund manager, is genuinely outperforming the market based on pure skill or a unique advantage, they aren't just blindly riding the market's size or value trends. Now, pay close attention here, because this little matrix is going to save you some major headaches once you're out in the workforce. This is your cheat sheet for common errors. Got a mismatched time horizon? Fix it by making sure your risk-free rate perfectly matches your investment window. Like, don't use a 3-month T-bill for a 10-year project. Unadjusted beta? Well, we literally just covered the fix for that one. And finally, never ever assume risk premiums are static. Use Excel's built-in data table feature to test a whole range of market risk premiums. That way, you can see a matrix of possible outcomes. In finance, transparency is absolutely key. All right, our final section, section 6, real-world investment decisions. Let's talk about choosing the right model for the job. So why do professional corporate finance teams actually rely on these benchmarks? Well, this right here is exactly how the cost of equity is built out in the real world. When a massive company is trying to decide whether to invest millions into a brand new project, they need a hurdle rate, a minimum required return. CAPM gives you that first base bar. But if this new project behaves kind of like a small cap or a value investment, we have to stack those size and value premiums right on top. This creates a much higher and, frankly, a much more accurate hurdle rate. If your project can clear this multi-factor bar, then yeah, it's genuinely creating real value. So that begs the question, when do you actually use which model? Go ahead and use standard CAPM when you just need a really quick cost of equity estimate for basic corporate finance. It's simple, it's fast, and it's widely accepted. But if you're doing performance attribution, like trying to evaluate if a mutual fund manager is actually skilled, or you're just trying to figure out the specific factor tilts of your own portfolio, you absolutely must use the Fama French 3-factor model. It's not even a debate. To really hammer this home, let's look at this quote. Imagine a fund manager is boasting about a massive 15% return, while CAPM only predicted a 10% return. Under CAPM, they look like an absolute genius stock picker generating 5% alpha, right? But when you run that exact same fund through a Fama French regression, it might reveal that their alpha is actually 0. No way! That excess return wasn't brilliant manager skill at all. It was just compensation because the manager systematically loaded up on risky small cap and value stocks. The multi-factor model exposes the real truth. And you know what? The evolution hasn't even stopped there. In 2015, Fama and French expanded their work into a 5-factor model. They added profitability, which shows that robust companies outperform weak ones, and investment, showing that conservative investing companies outperform those spending aggressively. Honestly, there are so many models floating around now that researchers jokingly call it the factor zoo, but the core premise is always exactly the same, isolating exactly what is driving a stock's return. I want to leave you with this somewhat provocative thought as you head out into the financial world. If advanced multi-factor models can eventually explain up to 95% of all stock returns simply by identifying known systematic risks, does true magical stock picking skill actually exist? Or is alpha just a risk factor we haven't quite discovered yet? I want you to think about that the next time you open up your Excel spreadsheet. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing, and I'll catch you next time.